Kelly and Susan, would you just tell us a little bit about yourselves before we jump into the questions and the topic at hand here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Susan, and Kelly and I are both moms of 4. We both took career breaks and returned. My background's in tech. Kelly's is in education, and we both kind of, rose pretty high in our ranks, our respective careers, and then had kids and thought, okay, now what do we do?
Right. Right. How do we make that juggle? So I'm Kelly, and currently what Susan and I met each other speaking at a conference. And I remember thinking to myself as she was talking, gosh, I'm doing work to help people figure out who they are now, how they can pivot into their career, and or how they can change their career, how they can relaunch their career. And I'm getting to them to that point, but then how do we create the tools to actually get them there? What do we do? What strategies do we use to actually get them there? And I said, we have to have lunch. So we sat down, we had lunch, and
networking at its best.
Yes. And so we just started passing clients back and forth to each other. And then one day we looked at each other and we're like, there's more to
We can help a lot more women.
Yeah.
Most of our students are women, not all, probably 90%. We help a lot more professionals navigate work and life if we teach them what to do, as opposed to helping them individually. So I've done some executive coaching. I've also done some placement. And in placement's great, but you're not really teaching them how to do a job search. You're kind of doing it for them. So our courses are now available globally. We have one program that's specifically for people relaunching careers after breaks. And some who are just pivoting.
Right.
And then we have another program specific to military spouses, that's both male and female, all over the globe, who have their own unique challenges because they may have a decided career path and they may have never taken a break, but because they frequently move, they lose career traction. So really we work at the intersection of work and life where those challenges pop up. And we absolutely love our work. We've done work with you before, as you know, and today's topic is really interesting because it's very broad.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Thank you so much. I also took the liberty of changing your Zoom name so that your name is under you and it's not reversed. So,
you're good. You're so good.
So when I look at you your name is in the right place.
This is why we have a Megan.
Yeah.
These little details are not our strength.
My partner, he's a set and lighting designer, so he'll paint the house and it's beautiful, but then I'll go in and do all the little fine touches because what he does needs to look good from really far away.
Yeah.
So I'm well, let's get in there and do the little details.
Yeah,
so.
there you go. That's called the yin and yang.
Right?
That's good. Yes. Well, interesting because our topic today is really one of the things when we were looking at some of the questions.
Yeah.
Was that idea of knowing your strengths and the importance of knowing what your strengths are. So
yeah, and choosing your lane, knowing what the right direction is for you, because it's not the same for everyone.
Right. Yeah, it's totally important. So we're going to jump on those things, talking about first job pursuits, career shifts after breaks that you mentioned, finding your lane, and we highly recommend you ask questions, folks, if you're listening, because if you're on the job search, as we know many of them are. It's pro tip. It's not about writing resumes, as we'll hear, and it's also not about applying online for jobs. So we're going to jump into what some of the pro tips are. So where would we like to begin? What are some of the first steps to getting a new job or role?
Yeah, well, we really believe strongly that you have to start with knowing who you are, defining your brand. And so that's looking at your strengths, your values, your interests, your aptitudes,
your experience.
Your experience is a huge piece of that.
And your hard and soft skills.
Absolutely.
We're big believers in that. And there's tons of research now on the value of soft skills. We were listening to the end of your last presentation. And if you look at AI, what AI can replicate is things that are done in an objective and conventional and repeatable way. So things that require more nuance, more creativity, more spontaneous thought can't yet be done by AI. And I don't know how long it'll take for them to be done that way. But Google, for example, which has extremely rigorous technical standards for its employees, the expectation is by 2030, the top 5 of their job skill criteria are going to be things like humility, collaboration, creativity, agility. I like technicals down in the 6 through 10 range.
Right.
So we want people to understand that that brand is not just where you went to school and the last job you had. It's a lot more than that.
Yes.
The other thing that we see, just kind of as a precursor to that question or that answer, is that most people, when they think they want to do a job, get a job or change a job, I'm going to write a resume today. I'm just going to write a resume.
Or I'm going to dust my resume off,
Right,
right?
10
I'm
years
going to
ago.
just go back and take that resume out and I'm just going to tweak it a little
Change
bit.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll change my name. I'll change the font.
So you want to start there, and that is absolutely not where you should start.
You start where she
Start where
said. You
you
start with like,
start
know who
here.
you are. And,
Uh-huh.
and then the second piece is the kind of know your lane, know where you're going, know your audience.
Yes.
So whether you are networking, interviewing, writing a resume, talking to someone, or God forbid, applying online, which we'll talk about later, you need to know who the recipient is. And so we call it like the, stop me when you hear something you like resume. That might have worked back in 1990. It doesn't work now because you get like a 6 to 8 second audience. You've got to make sure that you are speaking to them immediately to capture their attention and not making them try to figure out if you're a fit. So the time that you spend defining your brand and who you are, it's an equal amount then doing the research to figure out, where do I fit? And not only where do I fit, but who fits me?
Right.
Because that's an important shift.
Yes, I think that oftentimes if we're making a pivot or we're relaunching our career, we're just grateful for anybody who gives us that chance, anybody who is willing to, talk to us or have that conversation. And you should not think like that. There's so much value that you bring to every employer, and it's such time well spent defining what that value is and being able to speak that very clearly and articulately to the world when you're networking or, having conversations with people, because you are ultimately finding the fit that's for you. You're shopping just as much as they are, and you need to keep that mindset at the forefront when you are in a job seeking.
We actually recommend that people write down their main priorities. So for some people, money is less important at this point in their life.
Yep.
But flexibility is paramount. Other times it's flipped. We have many students or many audience members even and followers who might be in a situation where they are fine financially, but they don't have benefits because their spouse is working freelance, right? And so they don't really care about the hourly rate or the salary. They just want to make sure they can get a good benefit plan. So really writing those things down and being clear enough about them that you can have the confidence to walk away from something if it's not fitting you.
Absolutely.
And that comes from developing the confidence of really understanding your brand, who you are, what you offer.
Yes.
Yeah, so important. How do you suggest folks do that internal work to discover who they are, what their brand is, what those values are? How do we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big believer in like a notebook and a pencil.
Yeah.
Like sitting down and asking those questions. What are my values? What's most important to me in my work, in my life?
Yeah.
We do a 360 in our course, which anybody can do.
Yeah.
We ask 10 people close to us.
Send an email.
Send an email. Just, can you tell me about what you think my key strengths are? How you've seen me exhibit them? What kind of work, if we were on a team, you'd want me to do? And then also, where do you think I have opportunity to grow? Or maybe even more directly, what wouldn't you want me to do? And getting that feedback. We're also big believers in having a me file. And this is for anybody who's newly to the job market, just out of school. Start at the first job you get. A me file is every review you get, every email or text that you get that says, hey, Hunter, this was awesome. You did such a great job. Keep those things. They're a great reminder of your strengths, of your value, but they also will reveal over time a pattern. I know that when people bring me in, they want me to lead something. This is what I do well. People are not hiring me to be a project manager. I'm too loose. That's me. But, really looking for those threads and understanding it and hearing it in other people's words.
And I think a big part of the struggle here is your confidence and the lack of confidence, or maybe a bit of a lull in your confidence. And so a great exercise to use it here to hear about your strengths is to sit down with somebody who you're going to tell either one of these two stories to. You're going to tell a story about a time when you hit it out of the park, when you did really well in a work setting, environment, you felt really good about it, you were at the top of your game, and ask that person just to listen for what your strengths are. And at the end of that conversation, have that person tell you, here is what I see your strengths are. This is what I get about you. And write those things down. It is such a powerful exercise. We have all of our students do this when they
We even do
come
this
to
at
our courses.
events when you're sitting next to
Yeah.
somebody you don't know.
Yes, because oftentimes we aren't great at calling out our own strengths. And
Mhm.
especially when you're in a place where you have a lower level of confidence, it is so critical to help yourself build that back up again. And this exercise can really help you do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the negativity bias, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
But often
We
it's-
start with the bad things. Well,
Yeah.
here's all the things I'm not good at, here's
Yeah.
all the things I can't do. But yeah, it's really good. And oftentimes what we see, especially with our students over time, is you are going to have to, this is to everyone out there in the audience, you are going to have to talk about your strengths. And we feel like we're bragging or we're being boastful or, I'm just,
Or we're feeling like imposters.
Yes.
Often too.
or I'm going to turn somebody off talking about this. No, what you are doing is you are educating people about who you are. That's what your job is when you're in this process. And so you want to be able to speak about yourself in a clear and articulate way.
I love that reframing. That is so wonderful. Say it again, you're educating people who you are?
Yes, you're educating people about who you are. That's what you're doing. You're not bragging, you're not boasting, you're
And
not.
for those of you in the audience who are career relaunching after taking a break, you're also educating them on the value that you bring, not only from your experience before your break, but the value of the experience that you developed during your break. So when you ran that nonprofit or sat on that board or advocated to the state about, homeschooling or were a guardian ad litem or the executor of an estate. I mean, all these things develop and
Growth
perfect skills. And we want to make sure that people understand that is part of your brand too. It's a very valuable part of it. But sometimes we have to educate the person on the other side of the desk. That, well, let me explain to you how this works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So for folks looking for a new job right now, if you're saying it's not dusting off that old resume, if it's not applying for jobs, what are some of the most valuable resources today for the job search process?
your network
Your network.
and your network's network. So in two different ways. So that first question about how do you get started? We talked about knowing your brand, knowing your audience. And once you've got an idea of where you think you might want to be, especially for those of you pivoting or entering the new market or after a break, you want to start doing some research. And we call that, our process is called explore and assess. So Hunter, you're working remotely for, Powerfly is technically considered a tech company, but you're really a service company. And let's say I'm interested in human resources, or I'm interested in working in facilitating conversations like this. I might just call you up and say, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you do. And then I interview you. That's the explore part. What's it like working remotely? What's it like working for this company? Maybe you work on contract. What's it like working as a contractor versus an employee? Finding out what it's like. And then I sit down and I assess and I say, okay, based on my brand, are my skills a good fit for this kind of work? And based on my priorities and my values, is this organization or this role a good fit for me? So again, it's kind of old school writing things down, but you use your network both to educate you on opportunities and discern whether they're a good fit for you. Later, after you've figured all that out and you've got a resume that speaks to your audience, you've got a great LinkedIn, and now you're networking, you may go back to those same people, but now it's for the different purpose. Now it's, Hunter, I know that you know Kelly. I'd really like to meet her. Could you do a soft introduction for us? Then it's that same thing. So really, there's nothing more important.
Building a warm up to that
Yeah.
relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because the relationship is critical. Really interesting. Right before we hopped on this call,
Yeah,
Susan comes
exactly.
like barreling in. She's on the phone with her nephew, and he is currently looking to make a change in his career, not in his career, but in his job.
He wants to leave his current company to go to a bigger company in a bigger role. And it's sometimes easier to do that if you leave.
So he was calling her to tap into her network, and then she said, actually, Kelly knows someone. So walked in, she's like, I'm getting off the phone right now. I'm gonna have that conversation right now with Kelly. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll just text him right now.
She teed it up minutes before we got on the phone.
Text it and shot it off, and they're already gonna connect in a matter of minutes. But it's really talking to people. One, she has credibility with me. And he knew to talk to her, and now I'm gonna make I feel comfortable making that connection. It's really about, and especially for this younger generation that's coming up, we as career experts have a lot of people tapping us for jobs and things and connections. And what I want to caution you against is having your parents do that work for you, because that happens. That, you know, your well-intentioned mom or dad wants to be the one that's kind of the intermediary between all of it. They can make that initial connection, but it is up to you to continue the conversation. It's up to you to make that next reach out. And this is your life, your job, your career, and you want to start building that name for yourself right out of the gate. And it happens in that networking space.
And there's a lot of value in second and third level connections, both metaphorically and in the literal sense, like on a LinkedIn. Because in this case, my nephew knows me. I know Kelly. Kelly knows Ryan, right? My nephew has no idea who Ryan is. My nephew doesn't even know Kelly. But it's knowing that the person you're connected with is connected to so many more people. And that's why we say the most important thing is your network and your network's network, and really understanding the value of that kind of exponential growth.
Yeah. I love that it happened right before the call.
Literally. I mean, Rob was on the screen.
She's
And we
like
were
coming in hot on her phone, ready,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, this is, but as you can imagine, this is how things go most
Yeah.
days at PTLU. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So there's been the big AI boom over the past year. I'm definitely very involved in using it now. How is it involved in what y'all are doing, and how is it shifting how you are looking ahead?
Yeah. Well, and especially unique to this audience
Yeah.
that we're speaking to. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you asked the question, because it's
Yeah.
really easy. We've been trying tools out ourselves. We did a workshop recently, probably about a year ago, just on using AI in your job search. So places where you shouldn't use it, anywhere where your voice has to come through. So writing your resume, writing your an elevator pitch. Someone was telling us yesterday they used it to write an elevator pitch, and it sounded like it could be anybody's elevator pitch. I think what we have to remember is that, particularly
Or cliched. It was a
full of
cliche.
cliches, yeah. What you have to remember is that the AI tools are only as good as what's out there already. And most resumes are terrible. I spent 15 years of my life working in that field. I can tell you that one out of 200 is even good, right?
Right.
So guys, like bad, garbage in, garbage out. So you don't want to use it. You could use it if you're really, let's say you don't speak English as a native language. Let's say you really are struggled, maybe you have dyslexia, or you just really struggle with writing. You could use it as a starting point. But your resume should be in your words. It should tell your story with your voice
and your soul.
Yeah.
Because that's like, we actually just did this whole deep dive on a tool that we were thinking about using in some of our work that we're doing with our students. And one of the things that came out from the feedback from the students is, I just feel like what was being said was soulless in a way. It was missing those gems, those memorable moments that you want to create in your resume that come from conversations with, like, so for example, in that strengths exercise that I said earlier, or the strengths exercise that Susan talked about, where you're sending that sort of 360 to people around you, that is a great place to mine for language that you are going to embed into your resume. And that language will make you memorable. If AI has created the shell
results-oriented, data-driven,
we're going to take out those cliches.
Proven, yeah, it's just they all read the same.
Yeah.
So that's one way not to use AI.
Yeah.
But you can use AI in meaningful ways to help you through the search. So for example, let's say you're networking and you want to work at Power to Fly, and you go to Power to Fly's website, and you go, their LinkedIn page, you go to people and you start looking at people who are in, let's say you want to work in finance, looking at people in the finance department. You could go to each one of their pages and read each one of their LinkedIn pages, but then you start forgetting things, they start blurring together. Or you could go to each of, let's say there's 7 people in the finance department. You can cut and paste each one of their experiences into ChatGPT, just dump it all there. And the question could be something like, tell me the top 5 skills and qualities these candidates all have. And then it's going to tell you, these candidates all have this. You're going to know that, okay, if 7 of 7 people in finance at Power to Fly, where I want to work, have these skills and experiences, this is what they're looking for. This is above and beyond what the job description says. You could also do it with a job description, though. If you're reading a job description, it's very long. And many of them have, they're asking you to speak, Chinese and, you know, be able to immerse yourself in Eastern European culture. I mean, there are things that are just unrelated to the job and probably impossible, right? So you dump the job description into like a chat GPT and just say, what are the most important things for me to have for this job? And it's going to read through all of them. That's a good use of AI because it can do that. It can scan and kind of replicate a human brain's ability to say, okay, this is important because it's mentioned in different ways 6 different times, but this isn't so important because it was just thrown in at the end.
Well, and also in networking, or say you're going on an interview and you know who the hiring manager is going to be sitting across from you and you want to get some data on them, you could go to LinkedIn, do something similar and just say, give me 5 key characteristics of this person, or you know, this hiring manager, or so that when you are in there, you already are walking in with some confidence that I know this person sitting across from me. I know this person I'm networking with. I can lead with, oh, you know what? You went to such and such school, and you really like X and Y, you know, because oftentimes like in that, what is it? It's not the profile statement. What is it called? The about section of someone's LinkedIn profile, you get a little bit more flavor of who that person is. So it's just a great opportunity for you to quickly gather that data.
This distills a lot of data down for you, especially if you've got a lot to process. There are also some tools that we like. One specifically on LinkedIn, which is a new kind of a bot-powered interview tool, where you'll get a question, you'll answer it back, and it'll come back and give you some feedback. Does it equal or replicate doing it with a human? No, it's not even close. But it's one way to build some skill experience and to perfect your skill in interviewing. It's one tool that we like for that. So I think to answer the question in the general, anywhere where you need to be presenting yourself, where this, whatever it is you're asking has to be you, it's not a good use of AI. But when you're using it to help you research something, to help you practice something, then it can be a very good tool.
I was thinking while you were talking that your exercise earlier of talking to a friend and having them speak to you what they hear your strengths are, another great use for AI. You could just kind of do voice to text, talk to ChatGPT and say, what are all the positive things that you heard from this? Or you can even drop an audio file in, you know?
You're right. That's a great idea. And the other thing with that, Hunter, though, is
that's a really good idea.
What you might find is what you think you're talking about. So this happens a lot. Our students will write an about section on LinkedIn, and let's say it's a mom who's done a lot of advocacy work in her 10-year career break, but I'll read it because I have to approve them all, and I'll say, this is great, but I read so much more about what you were doing as a mom than what you did when you were a brand manager at Nabisco. So that would be a great use for it, because then what you think you're focusing on, what you think you're giving as a message may not be received that way. So I like that. We're gonna add that.
That might be a little part of our course.
Yeah.
I offer it up. This is what I'm here for. Yes, happy to do it. You know, I do it for improvement all the time. I drop transcripts in from interviews and ask how I did. And, you know, it's a great way for me to grow and to learn, because it's always awake and it's always ready to answer my questions.
And it doesn't feel bad when it gives you negative, you know, feedback. It doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can ask it to, you know, say it in a certain way if you want, you know.
Yeah, say it nicely. Kind.
Say it nicely.
Yeah, I saw someone recently like, explain quantum mechanics to me, but as SpongeBob. And I was like, that's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's the best. It's the best. So obviously we could chat all day. We only have 6 minutes left, if you can believe it or not. So let's talk about if you had some advice for candidates to stand out in the crowded pool these days, what would you suggest?
The most important thing is to be memorable. And if you understand that that hiring manager or that recruiter, depending on where you are in the process, is interviewing 20 candidates today and reviewing 100 resumes today, you might be the best candidate, but they'll never know if they don't remember you. Right. And that goes back to earlier, that first thing we said about really knowing your brand, being very clear on what you do well, how you do it, why you do it, for whom you've done it. Give me that picture in your language so that I can remember you. When you're in an interview and somebody asks you what your weakness is, Be honest. Tell me a
Yeah.
real weakness. Don't give me the stupid, I'm such a perfectionist. I
or-
mean, these are things that are just blah, blah. You know, your resume should not have any words like results oriented, you know, results driven. Of course, I don't want to, you shouldn't even be in my office if you are not driven to deliver results. That's like
Right.
just bottom of the barrel. Tell me
Yes,
about
can't
yourself.
breathe air, does eat
Right.
food.
I always say that, right? I have a
Yes.
pulse.
Yes.
Right, so really digging deep to understand who you are and presenting it confidently. I don't
Yeah.
expect you to come into my office being an expert at everything. I want to know what you do well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say memorable.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, and then creating the tools, right, that are going to get you to be memorable.
Right.
And so, for example, like, just like we said, you have that very initial section on your resume up at the top to just catch somebody's attention for 6 to 8 seconds, right? That's what you're getting.
Mhm.
So using creative language to explain who you are, that's going to catch someone's attention. If you're writing your about section, something that is, creative and is going to catch someone's attention, that's
Mhm.
really important. that
When
do.
you are, one of the best ways to be memorable is to be confident.
Yeah.
And confidence shows in really doing that preparation,
Yeah.
doing the research, knowing who you're interviewing. There's no excuse for you to show up and not know who I am and everything my company is doing currently, who our competition is. So taking the time to do the preparation, presenting that authentic voice that shows real self-knowledge and presenting it. But the confidence doesn't just come out of thin air. It comes from doing that work
You have to do.
and showing up with
Yeah.
that all kind
You
of in your bag.
Yeah, you can't just talk about these things. You can't perseverate on them. You have to actually do. You have to put into action.
Mhm.
That's where confidence comes from the action.
And we don't hire people who aren't confident. We want people who come in and make decisions, that aren't going to ask me for help all the time, that are going to fall down and get back up, that are willing to take a risk. I mean,
That
that's
are
what
curious and
anybody
want to
wants.
learn, and they're hungry,
Mhm.
and they want to ask questions. Those are the people that we're looking to hire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so important, because you can try to fake confidence, but it comes off as inauthentic, I think, most of the time, because there's underneath of that is imposter syndrome if we're not prepared.
Right.
If we are prepared, I came from an acting background. If I didn't know my lines, the scene sucked. Surprise, surprise. But as soon as I knew my lines, I did my research, I could just live, I could be, and I could just be present. And that confidence with me is being present.
Yes, I love that.
We've done that well today, Hunter.
Yes.
Oh,
And you've been going all day, so that's good.
Well, luckily I have wonderful people to talk to like yourselves, who are so engaging and know what you're talking about. We only got 2 minutes left. So if you could host a career makeover TV show, what would be the first makeover challenge you set for your participants?
Yes.
We would tell them to pretend you are your best friend, Hunter.
This would be the first, like, out of the gate, right?
So if you're our contestant, I would say,
contestant.
Hunter, I want you to pretend you're your best friend or your husband or your partner or whatever, that person that really knows you best. And I want you to sell yourself as him. In third person. That's what we would say. Because most people will do a bang up job. I could do a bang up job pitching her.
Right.
Yeah.
But I may not do as bang up a job pitching myself.
Right.
And so just entering that mindset, looking at yourself from the third person and pitch yourself to me right now. That's what we would do.
Yeah.
That just made my heart warm.
Try it right tonight.
Yeah.
I will. I know he's my biggest champion, so.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so lovely. It's always a delight to see you, Susan and Kelly. How can folks keep the conversation going with you and reach out?
So a couple of places. One, and a lot of things that we talked about today. We have a YouTube channel that you can find us at Prepare to Launch You, and we have tons of free videos there.
Every Monday we put a video.
Yes, we put a video out. So that's a great place to find us. And then you can also find us at www.preparetolaunchu, the letter U.com.
And coming soon, we will be, our podcast will be out too, and it's going to be very short videos of very specific questions, like things that you asked us today with a 10-minute answer.
And we have an info session coming up, a free webinar coming up in August, talking specifically to this audience. That's really hands-on and going to give you some tools that you can use to get your career
launched.
jump started.
It launched and relaunched, away we go.
Thanks so much, Hunter, for having us.
Thank you both. Such
Yeah.
a delight. I'll see you next time.
Oh, and I love that Carol's right after.
Hi,
us. Hi, Carol.
All right, take care.
Great. Take care, Hunter.
See ya.